Stanford University. It's one of the United States' most hallowed institutions, whose magnificently verdant campus, meticulously planned and funded by the legendary family that bears its name, is home to some of America's brightest minds, while also holding one of California's most enduring mysteries. Indeed, this illustrious academic haven was born from the grand vision of Leland and Jane Stanford, a duo whose influence helped sculpt the history of the Golden State through their construction of the nation's first transcontinental railroad. The Stanford dynasty, however, was marked by a chilling end: the mysterious death of Jane Stanford. In today's episode, we tell the full saga of the Stanfords, from unfathomable wealth and political influence to an untimely demise that cast a shadow over the family's legacy, and the university that stands as a monument to their name, as we describe the Stanfords and the mysterious death that built California. Leland Stanford might sound like your average 19th century tycoon, but the man was a veritable Midas of the American West. Picture a fortune worth $50 million back when that kind of money could make you a king, or at least a railroad baron, which translates to around $1.8 billion in today's dollars. Now, Stanford's journey to the top started on the tracks of the Central Pacific Railroad, and as a founder and the president from 1861 until his last breath in 1893, he wasn't just playing trains, he was crafting the arteries of America. Under his steerage, the first transcontinental railroad stitched the east to the west, transforming wild frontiers into hubs of migration and economic boomtowns, which, of course, lined Stanford's pockets quite nicely. But no titan of industry is complete without estates that scream success, and Stanford was no exception. Undoubtedly, his Palo Alto farm was more than just a fancy homestead. It was a laboratory for agricultural breakthroughs and a kingdom for his prize-winning horses. And then there was his Nob Hill mansion in San Francisco, a palace among palaces that served as the heart of social and political gatherings. Tragically, this architectural jewel fell victim to the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, but its legend as a symbol of Stanford's status lived on. And as with many legendary founding families of America, Stanford's personal life was interwoven with his ambitions. Together with his wife, Jane, he faced the unimaginable grief of losing their only child, Leland Jr., to typhoid fever at 15. But out of their heartbreak, they forged a lasting monument: Stanford University. And Jane, a pillar in her own right, pushed this vision forward, ensuring that the university would not only memorialize their son, but also stand as a beacon of learning and innovation for generations. And so, this couple that put the power in power couple has their family name forever cemented in the annals of American education, as one of the most prestigious universities in the world dons their surname. However, it wasn't all California sunshine and Napa Valley roses for the Stanford family. In fact, throughout their iconic history, a possible murder mystery was afoot. And in order to share that story, we'll have to start at the beginning. The name Stanford, rooted deeply in Anglo-Saxon England, not only evokes images of ancient landscapes, but also tells a story of its intrinsic link to the Old English words stan, meaning stone, and ford, a shallow river crossing. And in Leland, Stanford's lineage, the story begins with his ancestor, Thomas Stanford, who ventured from Charlestown, Massachusetts in the 17th century. And by the 18th century, Stanford's ancestors had migrated to the fertile Mohawk Valley of central New York. This region was not only agriculturally rich, but also strategically pivotal in the burgeoning nation's landscape, offering new opportunities and challenges to its settlers. Born on the 9th of March, 1824, in Watervliet, New York, Leland Stanford grew up in a farming family of modest means yet comfortable circumstances. His father, Josiah Stanford, was a farmer with enough resources to provide a stable life for his family, and Leland himself was one of 8 children, among whom were figures like New York State Senator Charles Stanford and Australian businessman and spiritualist Thomas Welton Stanford. Growing up in such a dynamic and ambitious family likely spurred a healthy competitive spirit and drive in young Leland. But Leland's early education was typical for that rural setting. He attended common schools, was tutored at home, and later continued his studies at the Clinton Liberal Institute in Clinton, New York, before studying law at Cazenovia Seminary from 1841 to 1845. Shortly thereafter, Stanford's legal career began earnestly when he joined the law office of Wheaton Doolittle and Hadley in Albany, and his admission to the bar in 1848 marked the official start of his professional journey. After relocating to Port Washington, Wisconsin, a significant boon to his early legal career came at the law library gifted by his father, reputed to be the finest north of Milwaukee. This resource was not merely a collection of books, but a fundamental tool that equipped Leland Stanford for the challenges and complexities of legal practice in mid-19th century America. However, the turning point came in 1852 when a devastating fire destroyed that same law library and other properties. This loss, coupled with the allure of new opportunities in the West, prompted Stanford to leave Wisconsin and began what would become one of the most legendary rises to wealth in Californian history. Leland Stanford's journey to California in 1852 was propelled not by the typical prospector's dream of striking gold, but by the economic revolution spurred by the gold rush. In 1856, alongside his wife Jane, Stanford moved to Sacramento, diving into large-scale mercantile ventures. He became one of the celebrated Big Four, or as they referred to themselves, the Associates, who were instrumental backers of Chief Engineer Theodore DeHone Judah's ambitious plan for the Central Pacific Railroad. This group, which also included notable figures like Charles Crocker, Mark Hopkins, and Collis P. Huntington, incorporated the railroad on the 28th of June 1861, with Stanford assuming the presidency. His initial political ventures saw him running for governor of California in 1859, although not successfully. But he clinched the position in 1861, facing such formidable challenges as the Great Flood of 1862, which forced him to row to his inauguration. Additionally, during the construction of the Central Pacific, Stanford and his associates seized control of the Southern Pacific Railroad in 1868, establishing a rail dynasty with Stanford at the helm until 1890, barring a brief period when Tevis acted as president. Stanford's leadership extended to the iconic moment at Promontory, Utah, on the 10th of May 1869, when he presided over the ceremonial driving of the last spike that completed America's first transcontinental railroad. However, this monumental project relied heavily on Chinese immigrants, whose recruitment was crucial for the dangerous and demanding labor of laying tracks across America's rugged terrains. Despite their indispensable contribution, these workers faced severe persecution amid rising anti-Chinese sentiment. In a controversial 1862 address to the legislature, Governor Leland Stanford expressed stark opposition to Chinese immigration, citing the potential cultural and economic threats posed by what he termed an inferior race. This rhetoric initially garnered acclaim, but Stanford's popularity would wane when it was disclosed that his railroad project heavily relied on the very labor force he disparaged. Despite the controversies, the completion of the Central Pacific Railroad in 1869 indeed marked a revolutionary moment in American transportation. As part of the first transcontinental railroad, it drastically reduced travel time between the east and west coasts from months to mere days. And this achievement not only transformed the movement of goods and people across the country, but also propelled Stanford to immense wealth and prominence. Furthermore, the federal government's generous land grants and financial incentives per mile of laid track amplified the profitability of Stanford's venture, securing his legacy in association with a landmark infrastructural achievement. However, Stanford's approach was mired in controversy. His administration was often criticized for prioritizing railroad interests over the broader public good. This criticism stemmed largely from his advocacy for state bonds and other public financing methods, that disproportionately benefited the railroad. Moreover, Stanford's governance period coincided with severe policies against Native Americans in California. While he did enact legislation that reversed some aspects of the 1850 Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, which had permitted the enslavement of Native Americans, his administration also perpetuated the Bald Hills War in Northern California. Thus, Stanford's dual role as a political leader and a railroad magnate allowed him to craft policies that facilitated the rapid expansion of the Central Pacific Railroad. Yet, this progress came at a significant social cost. The state support he marshaled provided critical infrastructure and economic growth, yet it also underscored a troubling prioritization of industrial advancement at the expense of ethical governance and equality for all Americans. And yet, his wife would be instrumental in creating one of the most iconic schools of higher learning in the United States in short order. Jane Elizabeth Lathrop Stanford was born on the 25th of August 1828 in Albany, New York, into the modest home of shopkeeper Dyer Lathrop and his wife, Jane Ann. Her early education began at the Albany Academy for Girls, the nation's oldest continuously operating girls' day school, indicating a learned upbringing. And at the age of 22, in 1850, Jane married Leland Stanford, at the time an ambitious attorney whose enterprises would later leave indelible marks on the American West. Now, as Leland ventured into large-scale mercantile activities and later co-founded the Central Pacific Railroad, Jane stood by him not just as a spouse, but as a pivotal figure in her own right. Her influence extended well beyond the domestic sphere. She was a confidant and advisor, heavily involved in Leland's business and political strategies. But the couple's life together took a heart-wrenching turn in 1884, when their only child, Leland Stanford Jr., died of typhoid fever at the age of 15 during a trip to Italy. This profound loss devastated the Stanfords and brought about a transformative shift in their lives, driving them to honor their son's memory through enduring philanthropic initiatives. You see, the young Leland had exhibited a vibrant curiosity and potential, and his untimely death created a profound void in their hearts, one they aimed to fill by forging a legacy that would resonate far beyond their own lifetimes. Compelled by their immense sorrow and the desire to immortalize their son, the Stanfords resolved to channel their vast wealth into creating an educational institution that would benefit the youth of California. Therefore, in 1885, just a year after their son's passing, Leland and Jane Stanford established Stanford University. They envisioned the university as a beacon of learning and innovation, a place that would nurture future generations and reflect their progressive values. And this institution was conceived as a non-sectarian co-educational sanctuary of knowledge, open to all, regardless of gender or economic status, which was a radical ideal for the time. Moreover, Jane Stanford's role in the university's formative years became even more pronounced after the death of her husband, Leland Stanford Sr., in 1893. She took the helm during some of the institution's most turbulent times, steering it through financial crises and the devastating 1906 earthquake. And her decisive leadership helped secure the university's future, transforming potential disaster into enduring legacy. Now, Stanford University officially opened on the 1st of October 1891, committed to producing cultured and useful citizens. And its curriculum was an innovative blend of liberal arts and practical skills tailored to the needs of the burgeoning industrial age. Yet just 2 short years later, the panic of 1893 and subsequent challenges to her husband's estate plunged the university into financial uncertainty. Despite these trials and the Board of Trustees' recommendation to close temporarily, Jane's steadfast belief in the university's mission galvanized her to keep its doors open. And beyond the campus, Jane Stanford's philanthropic efforts reached into the community. She supported kindergartens and orphanages, extending her impact beyond the educational realm to broader societal benefits. However, It was her mysterious death that would become an equally controversial part of the Stanford legacy. In 1905, the demise of Jane Stanford was shrouded in mystery and marked by controversy that has persisted for over a century. You see, on the night of February 28th, while residing at the Moana Hotel in Hawaii, Jane Stanford met her untimely death under harrowing circumstances. After consuming bicarbonate of soda given by her longtime secretary, Bertha Berner, to alleviate stomach discomfort, Stanford began exhibiting excruciating symptoms indicative of strychnine poisoning. And in her final moments, she declared, "I have been poisoned," a chilling proclamation that prefaced her death shortly thereafter. Consequently, the immediate aftermath of her death was riddled with confusion and obfuscation. David Starr Jordan, then president of Stanford University, swiftly declared that her death was due to natural causes, specifically heart failure, an assertion bolstered by a report from Dr. Ernest Coniston Waterhouse, which Jordan had expedited. However, this conclusion starkly contradicted the observations of the attending physicians and an autopsy performed in Honolulu, both of which identified strychnine poisoning as the definitive cause of death. Then, the management of the circumstances surrounding Jane Stanford's death by university leadership ignited a firestorm of controversy. Jordan's quick dismissal of foul play and his promotion of a narrative centered on natural causes fueled suspicions of a cover-up, possibly aimed at shielding the university's prestige and financial integrity. Furthermore, the lack of a comprehensive police investigation in either California or Hawaii, coupled with the discontinuation of an inquiry into an earlier attempt on Stanford's life, only added layers of doubt and speculation. As decades passed, speculation continued to swirl around the motives and identity of those involved in Jane Stanford's poisoning. One prevalent theory cast suspicion on Bertha Berner, who was present at both incidents involving poison. Some suggest Berner may have had a financial motive or a fear of losing her job, which could have driven her to commit such an act. Another theory points to David Starr Jordan, whose strained relationship with Stanford and her intentions to dismiss him from his position at the university may have provided him with a motive to eliminate her. Despite the plethora of historical research and burgeoning academic interest, the true circumstances of Jane Stanford's demise remain shrouded in mystery, with the identity of the perpetrator still elusive. Her death is a striking example of the convergence of wealth, power, and academia during the early 20th century, spotlighting the dark undercurrents that lurked beneath the polished veneer of America's elite society and its revered institutions. Thus, the legacy of Leland and Jane Stanford is deeply rooted in the inception and evolution of Stanford University, standing as a living tribute to their vision for higher education and public welfare, and the controversial yet inspiring history of the state of California overall. While on one hand, Leland's rapacious business practices are a contentious stain on the family legacy, the tragic loss of Leland Stanford Jr. not only catalyzed the couple's philanthropic efforts, but also infused the university bearing their name with a profound sense of purpose, aiming to benefit the children of California as if they were their own. Today, Stanford University is celebrated not only as a premier educational institution in the United States, but also on the global stage, renowned for its groundbreaking contributions to research, particularly in technology and engineering, which have been instrumental in the rise of Silicon Valley. Furthermore, the architectural essence and the layout of the university's campus were meticulously shaped by the Stanfords. They incorporated elements of California mission architecture and the visionary landscape designs of Frederick Law Olmsted, creating an environment that is both inspirational and iconic. And now, we'd like to see you in the comments. Are you or any loved ones graduates of Stanford University or natives of Northern California? And what are your opinions on the Stanford family legacy? We love hearing the direct life stories of our viewers below, so please feel free to add your thoughts, and thanks again for joining us for another episode. Cheers, until next time.